Have you ever felt stuck in your growth journey, wondering how to build resilience in the face of challenges?
Or maybe you're looking to shift your mindset and unlock your full potential.
Well, if you said yes, then you are in the right place.
Welcome to the Stretch Zone. I'm Hannah.
And I am Feds.
And here we explore self-development, nurture resilience, and embrace the mindset shifts that help you grow beyond your limits. Hello and welcome back, everybody, and welcome back, Feds. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm good. It was a sunny day today, so I can't complain. I feel like the winter is slowly drifting away, which makes me very happy.
Do you think that you used to start every conversation about weather before you lived in the UK, or is this since living in the UK?
No, this is a UK thing. 100%. Definitely.
I've noticed a theme that we did talk about at the beginning of every podcast.
Yeah. And it's not going to be, I feel like now that I live in Italy, it's not going to be very relevant because it's always the same. So it's in summer, it's going to be like, oh, it's so hot. It's always hot. So, but yeah.
So funny.
How about you? How are you?
Not bad. Still in Cleveland at the moment. Today is a warm day of about a maximum of 7 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
We had a big dump of snow yesterday and then it rained, so it washed it all away, which actually we're quite pleased about because walking here in all the snow and the ice, walking our lovely dog every day is a challenge. It's taking your life in your own hands, we've noticed.
Yeah, can imagine.
The amount of times we nearly died slipping over has been too many to count now. Anyway, today we are talking about, we thought actually we'd bring something sort of to the table today that I think if I was to say that I would experience this, let's say 10, 15 years ago, I would probably be quite surprised at myself. I was always someone that probably felt quite comfortable meeting new people. And these days things have slightly shifted, funnily enough. And it's about, we thought we'd bring to the table today the idea around overcoming social anxiety and especially when it comes to sort of that self-doubt when you're putting yourself into a new environment. So for us, we've done that many times. We've moved so many times. We're constantly meeting new people. And yeah, I would say that for myself, many years ago, I was kind of really quite happy about going to a new place and being that plus one. I was sort of a really comfortable person. And we'll talk a bit more about this, but I would say that things really shifted through probably COVID time, the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that it's something that I've experienced as well. And I definitely think that since the pandemic and since I've moved around a little bit more in a different situation, I've definitely developed a different way of approaching people, of meeting people, of feeling in a group, Yeah. And I think it would be an interesting thing to start with a little bit of a definition of what social anxiety is. Knowing that, of course, as always, this is something incredibly personal. It may have a lot of different symptoms depending on who you are as a person and how you approach others, how you relate to others. But anxiety overall, it's a feeling of overwhelm when we feel that we don't have control over what's happening and we don't know exactly what to do, what to say. We can't foresee what's going to happen in the future. And so this puts us in a place of lack of control. And in a social setting, it's created by the people around us, not intentionally, of course. So it's something that happens within us. And so there could be a lot of different triggers. It could be fear of judgment. It could be this idea of feeling like an outsider, feeling that we are not part of the community, a lacking sense of belonging. We don't feel that we are within a group of people, we are accepted. We overthink simply social interactions. And so we start reading between the lines every single time we talk to someone. And I want to highlight this, that this is something that we do uh, unintentionally.
Yeah.
We don't walk into a room thinking, oh, yes, let's make my life so hard. That would be literally like, yeah, no, that's not what we're doing. We do this completely unintentionally, and we are conditioned by a lot of different reasons that we're going to talk about today to feel this discomfort when we are with others. And of course, this can normally happen in our hometown when we go to a cafe, when we go to the cinema, when we go to a shop. But this is especially true when we are in a foreign setting. So we could feel all of these feelings even more. And for many different reasons. Like the first thing that I can think of is language barriers. And this is something that my clients slash students feel very often. This idea when you walk into a shop and you need to ask a question in a language that is not your first language, you have this fear of being judged, this fear of, oh my God, am I doing the right thing? Am I saying the right thing? What if I say the wrong thing? So language barriers is definitely one of the top reasons. Um, Also, the fact that often when we are traveling, we are alone. We don't really share these kind of experiences with others. If we have to go to the supermarket, if we have to go to a cafe, we normally eventually it will happen that we are alone. You know, and so it makes us feel like we don't have a support system around us. Cultural differences, especially when we are traveling between countries that are very different culturally, it can be a bit of a shock at the beginning to try and understand how people communicate with each other, how to not feel like an outsider. So there are a lot of emotions involved in this, and we're going to try and take a look a little bit. How can we try to ease into this idea of meeting other people, feeling a little bit more part of a group? And as you mentioned, I think this is a very important point. There are people who overall they don't like to be too much with others, like they are a bit of a hermits, and we were talking about this just before beginning the podcast. And then there are people like us who spend most of their lives with others, but having said that, things can change.
Yeah.
It can change in one direction and it can change in the other. And we're going to talk about a couple of examples of, these situations where we switched side for many different reasons. Um, these feelings are normal for expats, for non-expats. So if you're feeling socially anxious, you are not alone. Don't worry.
Absolutely. And that's really the main thing here we're just taking a pause to acknowledge that, we all go through phases in our life, even those of us who think we're totally at ease with new things, where anxiety just kicks in and takes over. And if we were to look at, the reasons why here, first of all, the brain, if we were to talk about the brain, if you're imagining that let's just take a moment and imagine we're walking into that new environment, okay? So there's a room full of people that we don't know. If it be in a cafe, a social party, or you're actually trying to network at an event, your brain is thinking, it isn't thinking, hey, cool, new people. It's thinking the opposite at this moment.
Oh my God.
Thinking, danger, danger. And then it thinks, I don't belong here. And that is all because historically, we as humans work better together. We are, able to survive much better in groups than we are as a single. And that hasn't really changed. However, our survival techniques these days are, as long as you can earn enough money to put a roof over your head and buy food, then you're probably going to be surviving better. Whereas back in thousands of years ago, survival literally meant life or death. It was definitely more severe than it is now. So our brain still kicks into that survival mode of, do I fit in here? Because if I don't fit in, if you think about animals and the runt of the litter, for example, it's much less likely that runt is actually going to survive till adulthood, statistically, if it's in the wild. Just because it isn't as strong, it's not as capable, and it has to try and keep up with the group. And if the group sees that it's lacking too much, it still won't actually help out. So we still, as humans, are trying to fit in as best as possible. We don't want to be left behind. So the brain is constantly tricking us into that survival mode.
Yeah.
And I think we can all take a pause and actually think of a time when you have walked into a new environment and gone, oh, I don't feel comfortable here.
I don't like this.
I don't like this. And there's a feeling of, I want to run away. Acceptance, and you do everything possible to seek acceptance. And then there's another layer that is probably more modern. The whole imposter syndrome comes to mind. Feeling like you're a fraud comes to mind. Yeah. I know so many people that use this phrase and feel this way in everyday life of, they can put on a show, put on a front, but actually deep down they're paddling away. You know how they talk about that duck frantically.
Yeah.
On top it looks serene, but they're frantically paddling underneath. That's usually the imposter syndrome. And it's just, you go into a new environment and this idea of, what am I doing here? How does it all work? And I
do I belong here?
Do I belong here? And I definitely think, for people like us who've moved so many times, those cultural differences can feel incredibly confusing. We're learning so many things. Maybe it's a new language, but then also just the etiquette of how things are done. I can really think of a few things where someone sort of pulled me up and questioned me on, oh, that's a weird phrase, or what does that mean? Or even an action, for example, the way I use my knife and fork in the US is different, apparently.
Yeah.
It's very funny. And if you're in a good frame of mind, you can sort of laugh about it. But even to the point where if I'm feeling uneasy and someone comments on my accent, depending on the day, I love it. But also depending on the day, I feel like, oh, I just stand out so much.
Yeah.
And it can make you feel vulnerable almost. I have to say, though, when I'm told to put my dog on the lead or on the leash, I definitely ham up my British accent as much as I can. I'm so sorry, I didn't realize about the rules and regulations here. So you can use it to your benefit too.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, as you mentioned, there are so many different, like the science behind it is so rich, and there are so many personal reasons. Like it changes on a day to day. Some days we are in a better mood, and some days we are not really in the mood to be with people. So, and I don't know about you, but to me, this has changed a lot. The more I'm getting older, the more I am feeling, I'm happy at home. I don't really want to go out. I don't have to meet new people. I find that it's becoming harder, and maybe because I have a bigger baggage with me to unpack. So if someone starts asking me, oh, so tell me a little bit about you, and I'm like, oh shoot, where do I start from? Like I'd rather go out with people I already know, because it's just easy. I don't have to just
Yeah.
I don't just I don't have to fake anything. But I also understand that if I were to move to a new country where I didn't know anybody, how do I overcome this initial overwhelm, and how do I overcome this initial anxiety that
Yeah.
it's so common among so
It's
many people.
so common. Everything you've just said would be so relatable, especially to people of our age group, sort of, 30s to maybe, I don't know, I'm just going to take a stab in the dark here, 55. I'm hoping that 55, you get a new energy for meeting people. I don't know if that's true or not. But
Yeah.
some people sort of say that they get a new I don't give a shit vibe, what other people.
Also,
So I do wonder if that is a bit of a cycle where we kind of blossom again. I'm hopeful that I become a social butterfly again in my sort of
what
mid to late 50s
you
and
know
60s.
what? One thing that I've noticed is that I definitely care a lot less when I walk into a room. Like, when I was younger, I had more this feeling of are people looking at me? Am I okay? Do I look good? Is
Okay.
it like, do I don't know anyone? Is that okay if I just go and I sit at the bar? Like, when I was younger, I had this kind of ideas a lot more often. Never stopped me, but I was feeling a little bit more worried about judgment, about other
Mm-hmm.
people's judgment. Now I don't care. Like, I just walk into a place and I genuinely do not care what people may think. And probably that's also what would help me a little bit to meet people, because I don't feel intimidated by others in the same way I used to. Now, whether I want to or whether I don't, I think now it's not connected to the anxiety of talking to others, but it's more of a personal choice. So I guess for the purpose of our conversation today, I'm going to think about a few years ago, maybe pre-pandemic, when I was a little bit more, well, younger and careless, I would say. And it was a different kind of approach to meeting others, and the
Mm-hmm.
circumstances were a little bit different.
So that's really interesting. I was thinking about this earlier today, and I was thinking I have noticed a pattern with
Mhm.
myself. When I have probably the most anxiety and social anxiety, and I'm going to remove the pandemic if I can from this because it is a different situation. But if I'm looking at the amount of time that I've spent overseas, which is 14 years, and all of the moves that I've done and new places, and even before I went overseas, I moved quite a bit in the UK from university age. I was moving quite a bit. Um, and so different parts of the UK that I lived in. And I think my most anxious time is every time I move. So I have realized that so initially maybe the first month or two, maybe even longer, depending on where I have moved to, I can be quite sort of like, oh, this is exciting, this is exciting, this is exciting. And I feel okay with, well, I'm new here, and I'll keep that, well, I'm new here. It's okay if I don't know anyone. Well, I'm new here. And then there'll be, and I can't tell you how long it is, it depends on the move a bit. Then there'll be a sudden moment where I'm like, oh my goodness, who am I? What am I about? What have I got to even say to people? I don't like this feeling of being different. And there'll be like this wave of real self judgment,
Mhm.
loss of identity is probably the way to put it.
Mhm.
And that can last for a few months to even longer. And I was thinking when I moved from Vietnam to Australia,
Mhm.
I remember and I'd become a yoga teacher when I was living in Vietnam, and I was also an English teacher. So I was an English teacher and a yoga teacher. When I moved to Australia, um, it was quite tricky to find work initially. Lots of places wouldn't hire me because I was only on a work visa, which meant that you could only work in a place for about 6 months, and then you had to
Yeah.
leave. That was the type of visa I was on it. So I was struggling to find even temporary work in shops and things.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, I managed to work it out, and I managed to get some work, and then I managed to finally get some yoga work. And then I managed to just do yoga, and I could get rid of the shop work. And I remember a few people, when they would talk to me, they would say this phrase, and I'm sure it was said like this, and if it wasn't, this is how I read it. You're only a yoga teacher? You're only a yoga teacher? Because I'd say, yeah, I'm a yoga teacher. That's what I do full time. What else do you do? You're only a yoga teacher? And I remember thinking, wow, when I was living in Vietnam, they were amazed that I even worked. People that I met were they just thought I was a lady of leisure, clearly.
Oh,
And
gosh.
they were just so amazed that I even had a job.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now in Australia, my job is not good enough. So then I would start to doubt myself constantly and be like, well, being a yoga teacher is clearly not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've moved to America, and I couldn't even get any work because of visas.
Yeah.
I couldn't even drive myself anywhere for the first 6 months. So my identity totally and utterly got a beating, and my ego, quite frankly, got a hammering. So again, walking into a new environment, if anyone asked me stuff about myself, I was just too ashamed and embarrassed to say that much. So then, unfortunately, I became more and more recluse. So looking back, I can see those are the times that I struggle the most, is when kind of a few months in to a new move. And I have maybe put pressure on myself that I should have sorted my life out, and I should have the kids. I should have the job. I should be able to drive myself around.
Yeah.
And there's all these assumptions that I think other people are making of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the toughest time.
So you felt the judgment,
Yeah.
like in other people's words, you felt the judgment of whoever was talking to you, like, oh, you're doing just that, you're not doing anything else.
Yeah. I avoid now talking too much because I'm in transition again at the moment in terms of my career and stuff. I've noticed that I avoid talking too much about myself in that way because I'm not yet there in terms of what I believe I should be at this age.
I think that this is an interesting thing, though, because how much of what you are experiencing is in your mind, and how much is effectively what's happening?
Absolutely agree with you. And not only in your mind, but in your body, because that was the next part I was going to talk about, was that I have a physical reaction, and it's less so now, but I remember when I was really trying to figure out what can I do here in this new environment, because I really had to change some things when we moved to the US. And I spent quite some time really trying to figure out, okay, this is my opportunity to change some stuff. So I'm going to take my time to do this. And I remember having physical like anxiety where it's in my nervous system. I could feel sometimes my palms becoming hot and clammy. I could feel myself being quite sort of short of breath, even talking to new people and trying to explain or tell them what part of my life I was in. So it's not even just in my mind. It was truly through my whole being and nervous system, this feeling. And you're absolutely right. How much of it was real? I would probably say most of it was just in my body and mind. And it was coming truly from a place of self-doubt rather than, I feel like someone could have done the smallest thing at that time to set me off, if that's the right phrase, to doubt myself. It was very much my mental state at that time.
And so what suggestion would you give to a person, let's not say a young, an old, a person,
anyone,
who is either moving to a new place or is living in a new place, and they don't know exactly how to navigate this feeling.
So go slowly, go gently. I should, and I've put inverted commas around that, know better. I have done this so many times, right? And yet here I am still probably having the hardest struggle in any of my moves was the last move. And yet still, you know, I had stumbles along the way. And it could happen at any time to any person, and it's okay. You know, I look back now at this, and I'm going to call it a transitional period of my life. All of my moves have been a transitional period, but I think this has probably been a really big one. I've had other big ones, but this is a more recent big transition in my life. And I can sit here and be really grateful for that discomfort and that difficult time. I now can look back and acknowledge that I'm a strong person, that I have resilience, that I have got the tools inside of me to change direction, to evolve. And through the evolving, you can't just be on top of the road, on top of the world the whole time. Through the evolving, there's going to be difficult moments. So it's kind of just give yourself a break, talk kindly to yourself, try and find at least one person that you can just have in your corner, you know, and it really just only needs to be one person. That one person that you've got in your corner. And then over time, things will start to become clearer. But just knowing that it's going to be in your time, you know. Other moves, I've had little rocky moments, and they've been maybe only for a few months. Whereas this particular move, you know, I've been in the US now for 2 years. It took longer, a lot longer. This one, yeah.
It does take time, and I think that the way we overcome this social anxiety changes in time. It also changes depending on in which moment of our life we are. When I was younger, I feel like it was easier for me to explain, oh, why are you here? Why did you move here? And because the answer was 9 out of 10, the answer was always, oh, you know, I just wanted to try something different. I've always loved London. I really wanted to live in the States. Like, I feel like also the question came from a more curious perspective. The why was not a judgmental why. It was, oh, why? Like, I'm genuinely curious to know why you moved here. Now that I'm a bit older and I've moved around a few times, and especially now that I came back home, when people ask me, why did you come back? It's not a genuine why. The question is, what are you thinking about? Like, what are you doing here? Are you really sure? I can see the underlying question is really, are you really sure of what you did? And so that's also why I'm feeling like, do I really want to have this kind of conversation, or maybe I want to avoid, you know, this kind of conversations. So I guess going back to this idea of social anxiety, it really depends on which moment of your life you are in.
I agree. That's really interesting that I was just nodding away so furiously when you said that. I totally agree with you that there is this sense of, you know what, before you're 30, you can do what the hell you want. And everyone just is like, yeah, they're just living their life, they're having fun. But then I think once you hit around the 30 mark, on the whole, depending on what culture you're from, on the whole, by 30, you are socially meant to have settled down, have a family, get married, and buy your house, and you settle, you know. And I know things aren't like that anymore, and actually most people realize that it isn't like that anymore. but there still is this fairy tale, isn't there? You know, all of our children's books are all about that. Fairy tale books and things on TV are about that. It's still like the common way of living your life. So when you go against that norm, yeah, someone doesn't even have to say anything for you to already judge it. I know that one of the most, I'm just going to put this out there. So my husband and I, we don't have children, and we're not going to have children. That's definitely, we've flown past that. And I remember when we moved to Brisbane, I would have been, I don't know, mid-30s then. And people would say to me, and I'm getting the same thing here in the US, people would say to me, oh, you should have kids, then you can meet people. And no one had ever said that to me ever until I moved to Brisbane. And I was just like, whoa. And it was so
that's intense.
Wow. And people do that here as well. In the US, although people of my age, and I'm 40, have got most people I know of my age here have teenage children. So
no, but also
in the US.
I find it quite disconcerting that people just say, oh yeah, you should have kids so you can meet people. No, that's not one of the primary reasons why you should have kids. Exactly. Yeah. If anything, you should get a dog if you want to meet people. You don't even have to buy a dog. You can just like rent a dog by the hour if you want to meet people, if you're doing it only to meet people, right? But
I loved that was their reason why I should have children.
I mean, that says a lot about people in general and the place, 100%. But I feel like one of the ways I managed to, let's say, ease into talking to people, communicating to people, was trying to find things in common with others.
Yeah.
And so if I often have this conversation with my clients, because a lot of my clients are either from Taiwan, from Hong Kong, and so a lot of people are moving or moved to the UK, to the US, to Australia, to study, to work. And the very first thing that I tell them is always try to find people who share something in common with you. Like, what do you like doing? Do you like hiking? Do you like cooking? Do you like gardening? Do you like dancing? Like, find people who share something in common, something they have something in common with you, because at least you know that you have something to talk about, and you don't end up having these awkward conversations of, oh, you should have kids so you can meet people.
I think so also, I totally agree with you. It's finding that common thread, and it's a thread. It does not, so something that I've spoken to a couple of people about, okay, it's what I've spoken to my husband about. So I'm someone that when we move somewhere, I don't need those new people to fit every single facet of my being. Whereas my husband on the other side usually need, let's say you've got 5 facets of your being, right? Or 5 edges, whatever it is, 5 interests that you've got in your world. For him, he would like to get 4 out of 5 to sort of really continue that relationship. And whereas I am happy with 1. I'll take 1 thread and I'll run with that. And I'm like, okay, fantastic. And I think that's probably been my lucky charm, or my go-to. It's what's kind of made me survive in all of these new places. I will just take that common thread and be like, that is enough for me to continue this friendship. I don't necessarily need all of them. Usually the people that I've stayed in touch with once we've left, they've probably fitted more than 1 of those.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's a good visualization, but that's just how I've approached friendships. And it's finding that one common thing that, that's I don't know, this doesn't sound like the right phrase, but it's almost, that's good enough for me, you know?
No, I see what you mean. I think I'm actually, made me think about, I do have a lot of friends And with most of them, I share maybe one facet, let's say, one thread. There are very, very few people, and I can count them on one hand, that I share more than two or three aspects of my life. And I think it's fine. It's okay,
It's okay.
and yeah, it's more than okay. And I think a lot of time people feel, well, some people, they feel they have not, people like your husband, for example, they need to have a lot more in common with others. They need to share a lot more with people. But then, of course, there are also those people for me, but they're simply less. They are not many because it doesn't happen very often. And I think knowing that I have that freedom when I walk into a room and I can just meet someone and I can share just one aspect of my life with that person. That actually helps me a little bit calming down and say, right, I don't have to agree on absolutely everything with everyone. I don't need to have everything in common with everyone. I just need one thing, and that's more than enough to keep the conversation going. It allows me to meet some friends, and it allows me, should allow, hopefully, people who are listening to this to overcome these initial anxiety. And I think it's also a good way to shift your mindset, because instead of thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to find anyone to talk to, I'm not going to find anyone who shares my interests, try and twist it into, oh my God, I'm going to find one person who definitely loves fantasy books. I'm definitely going to find someone who went to the seaside last summer. I don't know. Like, try and find things that are common enough so that you can actually have a conversation that it's not just about the weather,
Yeah. I assure you, Feds and I do talk about other things, clearly.
Yeah, clearly we do. So I think that's also how we can try and shift our mindset. So I think we have quite a few tips until now. So we talked about starting small, take it easy, shifting your mindset, of course, try and think about what are a few things you can share with the other person. And if they are not too many, then so be it. Anything else?
Yeah, I think try to notice, because I like to go back to the body. If you can become a little more in tune with your body. So I really remember those moments where I was so short of breath in a new environment. That's becoming less and less again, because I'm feeling much more comfortable with myself these days again. But it's, if that does happen to you, try to just observe, first of all, that you're having a bit of a physical reaction right now, and there will be different techniques that work for different people in those moments. And it could be just, say a little less, and that's okay. And maybe you have to take yourself just away. Sometimes if an environment feels too intense, and you like a party or something, um, certainly some gatherings, if I found it too much, I will actually put myself in a different, remove myself, go to the bathroom, whatever, take 5 minutes, and then just come back and rejoin. When I feel in a sort of more calmer state of mind, or move to try and speak to a different group of people. Maybe for some people, just one-on-one is better. So try to curate that. You not be afraid to be like, hey, do you want to go for a coffee, for a drink, for a walk? And try to create that environment, if that's a better way to start. Some people prefer a group rather than one-on-one. They find that too intense. So try to figure out what works for you. Think back to a past situation where you might have had a similar experience, and just try to figure out what worked for you to be able to put yourself out there again. Because for people like us who do move a lot, we need people. So we have to put ourselves out there. We have to be brave enough. We have to figure out a way to just step out of that out of our house, out of our comfort zone. Just
Definitely.
that one person initially,
And then it's like a snowball effect, I believe. Yeah, definitely. I'd be curious to know, because I know that are some of my clients/students listening, and I hope that are probably other people who have moved abroad. I'd be curious to know what is their go-to strategy for making new friends in a foreign country. What did you do? Or what are you going to do if you are about to move somewhere else? I was just thinking about one of my clients actually who moved to Canada, and he was a bit worried at the beginning because he was like, well, I don't know anyone. I don't speak English very well. And I was like, I'm sure you're going to be fine. And so he moved and he works in a university, and he's been, honestly, I don't know how much time he spends at home because he's always out and about with his peers, colleagues, and everyone is organizing something because they are all expats. They are all people coming from a lot of different countries. And so he's always out and about, and he's like, well, I need a break. I want to stay home. And I was like, well, you were worried about
it definitely does help when you're already part of a group that all come from somewhere else, transplanted your way in. I definitely noticed that moving to the English-speaking countries that I've moved to has been a lot harder to integrate. I like to use this phrase that people aren't hiring friends usually after the age of 25. And that can be quite hard to sort of penetrate into those friendship groups. But you just got to sort of think outside the box a bit, go online meetups, and don't be afraid, if you're really struggling, don't be afraid to reach out to groups of people from your own heritage. That could be at least the first step, because I know someone that I've been working with that just desperately didn't want to do that. Their mindset and their goal before they left their country was to integrate. They wanted this adventure. They thought it was going to be a certain way, but they were really struggling to integrate and make friends. And I made the suggestion, well, have you actually tried to go online and find people from where you're from? And they were so kind of like, no, I don't want to do that. But when we're struggling, again, it's find that one person.
Yeah,
they're still not going to be exactly the same as the people from back home, because they did what you did. They got up, they left their country, they've moved to a new place.
exactly.
And that could be at least kind of like your wingman, right? To then go out into the world and meet more people.
Definitely.
I'd be interested for listeners to let us know if you've ever struggled on integrating or that sort of social anxiety aspect. What would your advice be to someone going through difficulty? We'd love to know.
Yeah, definitely. Curious to see what all the people listening, guys, talk to us. We love to talk to you. You can find us as always on Instagram at the Stretch Zone _podcast. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Threads, many different places. So come and talk to us. And we are going to talk to you soon. The next time we talk about we don't know exactly what we're going to talk about. We know that it's going to be
planned.
Exactly. Yeah, we know that we want to talk about spring. We want to talk about renewal. We want to talk about reinventing ourselves, our life. So this is you get the idea of where we're going with this. So winter is almost over. We're going towards warmer days, happier days, sunshine. So if you have any ideas, you're always more than welcome to share it with us. But yes, that's where we're going towards the next time we see each other.
See you very soon, Feds. Nice
I'll
to chat.
see you soon.
Ciao.
Ciao. Wrapping up today's episode, remember, you don't have to face change alone.
If you'd like to connect or learn more about working with us individually, reach out to us through our Instagram account at @thestretchzone_podcast. or find our emails in the footnotes to this episode. We're here to support you on your journey, each in your own way.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Stretch Zone. If today's discussion resonated with you, remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode with anyone who might benefit. Until next time, keep stretching beyond your comfort zone.